scaremongering, I am querying why it is that the outsourcing issue has not been properly addressed. Privatisation and outsourcing, I believe, is at the core of the crisis that women faced in this country. Now, yesterday I went on a protest outside the gates with a busload of women from Cork, whose organisation is called Women's Lives Matter. And there were a number of women there who were misdiagnosed and who had false negatives returned. They were very upset that they weren't told properly by the clinicians. They were very upset that there was a whole scandal around disclosure, but they were extremely upset that they know that their lives and their future ability to have children were jeopardised because of outsourcing, and their demand is the repatriation of the service. Now, the Scally report, I want to argue, shows that there was a deep, deep problem with outsourcing, even though Dr. Scally himself says to me, I don't have a problem with the continued outsourcing to the US labs of this test. And he says to me, if I was a woman, I would have faith in Quest. But I want to quote from his report to indicate why I believe it shows that there was always a problem with outsourcing. First of all, the US labs were not ISO accredited. Now, I wrote 2 PQs to you in May, and you said they were ISO accredited. Unless it's the case that they became ISO accredited in May 2018, they were not ISO accredited when the contracts were awarded and renewed from 2008 onwards. And that's a fact. They have different standards in the US labs than they have under the ISO. Example of one of those standards is that those labs perform 100 screens a day, whereas generally speaking the accepted norm and standard in the Irish public labs were 60 a day. So there's a big difference already, and a difference which could jeopardise the scrutiny of the tests that took place. Irish labs have screeners who are educated to a very high degree. They have a science degree, and often they go on then to do postgrad with expertise on cervical screening. And they are overseen by clinical pathologists. This is not the case in the US labs. The cost in the tender from the Irish state to the US labs, the cost of the service was overemphasised, according to Dr. Scally. The Irish labs scored very highly when they tendered, except on the issue of costs. They weren't as cheap as America. CPL was visited, that's the site that settled with Vicky Phelan in 2011. There were problems found on the site that were not adequately addressed, and yet we still awarded them another contract in 2012. Why and how that happened? Well, we may never know, because we discover from Dr. Scally's report that the tender documents have been destroyed in 2017. And please, could you explain why that would happen? I worked in the public sector in the library service, and we had to keep a record for years and years of every penny that came in and out of that library, even though libraries normally don't handle money. How would the tender documents be destroyed, and why would they be destroyed? And I believe that again, I'll just repeat that the outsourcing is at the heart of this. I've asked you twice. I asked Tony O'Brien when he was in situ. I asked the Taoiseach to hear one day, and I asked the Minister for Finance, who replaced the Taoiseach, to hear one day at Leaders' Questions. Can you please tell us from what labs came the 221 false negatives? Oh yes, Deputy, you'll have that information. I've asked the clinical professionals, is this a difficult thing to find out? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because each slide has its own identity, and as soon as there's a problem triggered, the first thing that must happen is an audit at the original point of where the slide was tested. The audit has to happen in the lab from where the slide came. Can we please find out a simple answer from where the 221 slides came? I believe this is at the heart of it. I believe the definition of outsourcing, of privatisation of women's health, lies at the base of all of this problem. But here's the point, Minister, and here's the reason I raise it. You are about to sign, if you have not already done so, the continued outsourcing of this service to Quest and to Medlab, which is a subsidiary of CPL. Now, is that the definition of insanity or not? That you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? Please address that issue, because I'm worried about the future of the service as well as the past.